Good afternoon. Uh, we'll get started this presentation. If you guys want to grab a seat, we'll get started. Thank you. My name is Bobby Edgil. I am VP of Sales and Business Alliance for BLR. Live in Brentwood, Tennessee. If you guys know where that is, just outside of Nashville. And I see a lot of familiar faces and some I don't know. So we'll get started. We're going to talk about hiring the right salespeople, how to hire the best salespeople. But before I do that, I want to know who our audience is. So who here in this room has either duties now for hiring salespeople or have had in the past or maybe in the future? So yeah, pretty much everybody. And does anybody have any experiences they want to share, good or bad, about hiring salespeople? I've got a Yeah, we'll actually talk about that. And the easiest person in the world to sell is a salesperson, right? Because, a salesperson can empathize with the people they're interviewing. So we'll actually talk about that. And this is a great skill to learn because if you have a spouse or a child, you can use some of the same techniques. So we'll talk about that, and it works. So, and my children are of the age that they actually know when it's coming now, so they've got their own tactics, so it's kind of a battle of wits, and usually they win. Um, I found myself May the 1st, 2001. Uh, I just accepted a new role as a VP of sales for a company. And the company that I went to work for was a company that is in a bit of a mess. And a guy brought me in. He said, if I can just get the sales engine, and get it cranking, we'll be fine. So I went in. This gentleman had recruited me. I met him at my first ever formal sales training 9 years prior to this. And for 9 years, once a quarter, he would call me. And he'd say, "This is Don Ball. I want to talk to you about coming to work for me." And about every quarter, I'd say, I'm happy where I am. Things are going well. And then one day, he called me, and I wasn't that happy anymore. Things had changed, and I began to, kind of think about it some. I went home and talked to my wife about it. And over the next, few weeks, we made a decision, and we left Birmingham, Alabama, where we were living at that time, and we moved away. Went in and found a team. I've been a bit of a turnaround guy for sales organizations and had done really well with it. And I went into this team, and it was, I referred to them as the bad news bears of sales teams. I mean, it was pretty bad. And so after a few months, we had taken out the people that needed to be taken out. We had coached up the ones that were there that were good, that we thought we could work with, and we began to hire new salespeople. After 9 months, we were doing really well. It just totally turned everything around, and morale was good, and sales were good, and things were happening. So the president of the company came to me, and he said, I want to talk to you about being the general manager of this company. And this company was a sales and service organization. And I knew, a lot about sales. I knew a fair amount about service. Knew something about customer service, knew a pretty good bit about operations, but knew nothing really about, finance and accounting, other than what, those college courses you have to take, and somehow you have to get by. So I accepted his offer, and we started, and the first thing I had to do was hire a CFO. So, I'm a sales guy, and while I can talk to about anybody, not everybody can talk to me. So I found myself, interviewing for a CFO role. And it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. And I'd interviewed about 3 people. And I thought, gosh, this is not going well. I'm asking the questions I know to ask. And we're going through this. And they're talking a language I don't understand. And they don't really understand me. I couldn't make a connection. So I picked up the phone and I called our outside accounting firm. And I said, I need some help. And so we went through it and laid out the process, and they helped me, source a great hire that's actually still in place today, and it's now the president of the company. So it was a good hire. But without that help and direction, we would have never gotten there, ever would have gotten there on my own merits. So I was thinking about that one day, and I thought, well, this would be good because there's so many groups and organizations that are trying to make a change in their model towards sales, and it's hard to hire salespeople. It's hard for us to hire salespeople. We've got about 45 of them, and some days they do what they're supposed to do, and some days they don't. It's difficult, and they do. You're right. They sell you in the interview, and you're listening. You're kind of buying what they're saying. But there's some things and some techniques that we'll go through today, and we'll talk about that. Okay, good enough. All right. One thing about this, about building the sales force of your dreams, it is a work in progress always. There should never be a time, ever be a time that you're not recruiting your next salesperson. And what I choose to do and what I find out, I make the best hires when I really don't have an opening. So don't get in a desperate and a vulnerable situation. You've got this quota to hit every month, and two of them quit. One leaves. They're going to have to start a family, or somebody got transferred out. This happened to us Friday. Had a lady, one of our best performers in Tennessee. She was come in. She said my husband's being transferred to Wisconsin. And so, there's things like that that just happen all the time. So just always be looking. That's one thing I would just tell you. Just always be looking for your salespeople. And they come from a lot of different places. You'll see a couple things that I use in here, some different methods that I use in here. And it's really a blend of two trainings that I've had over the years from two consultants that I worked with for about the past 15 years on and off. So you'll see some of these things. So if you hear me say something like a COI, if you hear me say that, that's a center of influence. There's some people that that are around you that are in your group that know salespeople, that know people that are looking for jobs, and it's easy to just ask them from time to time. Who do I need to be talking to? When you're talking to your customers, who are the best salespeople that you talk to? Have two or three of those people you can go to all the time, and just ask them those questions, and you'll be surprised at what they can tell you. The first steps to building your team. Let's talk about that. I think anytime you are going to hire any position. So this is really applicable to all positions, but we're talking about salespeople now. Is you begin with the end in mind. What do you want it to look like? When I build this sales force, when I hire this salesperson, I want it to look like whatever your vision is, because it's easy. For salespeople, it's really easy for me. When I say this, people don't believe it, but I truly mean it. I could not tell you there's 7 billion people in the world. I couldn't tell you a person that I know that I just don't like. So it's easy for me to like people. There's some I'd rather be around than others, but I just don't dislike people. So you have to keep that in mind. And when they don't measure up to that criteria of what you're seeing, then that's kind of your checking point. In golf, if any of you play golf, you hear the golfers, like Tiger Woods, talk about visualizing the shot. And you'll see them when they get up over the shot, and they're visualizing the shot in their mind. And if they don't feel comfortable hitting that shot, you'll see them back off of it. It's the same way with this. It's the same way when you start interviewing people. Know exactly what you're looking for, and if they don't measure up to that criteria, then you should keep going. Yes, sir.
Can you clarify the type of sales positions you're filling here? Is this inside sales, outside sales?
Sure, I can do that. You'll see. Just we're going to do a mock interview for you here in just a little bit, and that'll come out. And we have a job description for every component of that. In our organization, we have really three types of salespeople. There's a group of hunters that we call ADRs. They set their own appointments. They're looking for their own leads. They're sourcing their own leads. So we have a job description for that. We have a inside sales rep where we're really providing them with all their information as far as leads, appointments, anything like that. And then we have national accounts, and it's kind of a mixture of both, but on a grander scale. So what we'll be talking about today in the interview that I do with Aaron will be our inside sales role is what it'll be.
So I guess I was wondering, would you say this applies to all three types then, or is it kind of on the same?
It will. This is pretty generic. I mean, once you get inside, the position, you'll tweak these questions a bit. That's why I use this one, because if you're hiring for what other positions your company that you're looking for, you can use these as a baseline for those questions, and you can do that. All right. One of the things that I ask in an interview, and you'll see this in just a few minutes, is we'll get them to talk about their past work history. Anybody want to say why we do that? What I'm looking for is, what have they done in the past to be successful? What are they willing to do? I mean, how hard of effort are they willing to put forth? It's on them. And in a sales role, you want people who can, go in and find or create a need and lead them to that. So you want to hear things about that when you're talking to them. And once they get into that, they say, well, I've been really successful in the past. One skill, and this is really a skill when it comes to interviewing people, um, is that the art of layering questions. So, when they give you that answer, don't just take that answer. Ask them questions like, tell me more about that. How did that help you? Are there other things you could be doing that would help you as well? And get them to thinking, because what you want to do is you want to layer those questions, because what it does, if there's somebody that's trying to sell you because they're a salesperson, this will catch them pretty quick. They'll run out of answers, or they'll start to stumble around and kind of not have very good concrete answers. What they'll do. We look for people who have a lot of energy. You know, One of the things, if I look at about 3 years ago, we went back and we took our salespeople. We took every one of our salespeople, and we gave them a thing called a PI, predictive index, and it's one of the sales tools that we have that tells you, this is what their tendencies are, this is how they like to be managed, this is kind of their personality. And what I was trying to do was, I said, all right, we're going to build the perfect sales force. So I'm going to find out, I know who the best sales reps are, and I'm sure they all have common characteristics. And I was really disappointed when we came back and they were all on the board. And I thought, gosh, I can't build a profile from this. It's just impossible. So what we do is, we just start looking for some of those things. Can they exhibit, energy and passion? Can they talk with conviction? Can they relate to you? They're usually really good storytellers too. I'll tell you that. Really good salespeople are usually really good storytellers. So, we look for those things like that. And again, those past performance predict, the future results of what it's going to be. So make sure you layer into that. And then I also ask, do they have relevant experience? There are certain types of people I like to hire and don't hire as far as coming from a particular profession. If you saw the quote in the newsletter that came out, one of the groups of people that I like to hire is I love to hire school teachers. Anybody want to know why, or want to take a guess as to why school teachers? Who said that? They are more tedious. That is certainly part of it. So, when I look at the sales managers I've had in my life, there's one lady that stands out for me. She's retired now. And her name was Dana Gentry, and she was a school teacher. And what I saw in her was she was very organized. She was always planned out, because they had to do lesson plans, right? So they plan out their days, and they stay on it and they go through it. They're really good at nurturing, but they're also good at discipline. So when they have reps that are doing things, they're really good at that. Really good at that. So that's why, and they make great salespeople too. Probably the best salesperson I ever had was a young lady who was in education, had been for about 3 years, and absolutely hated it. And when she came into sales and she started making a lot of money, she's like, wow, I didn't know you could do this. Because she was working really hard as an educator, and financially she wouldn't be rewarded like she wanted to. So that's a group that I would always look in. But you find out what relevant experience they have. What have they done in the past? What have they sold in the past? And my wife asks me all the time, if you can sell this product, can you sell any product? Well, not necessarily always, but it'll give you a baseline for what they're doing. Okay, so you can ask those questions. All right. I think if you're going to have a plan to recruit people, you also got to have a plan on what to avoid. Okay, so we're going to spend a little time on this, and going back to the first thing, not having a detailed hiring profile, a job description, because our questions are going to be based around that. Probably some of you may be guilty. I've been guilty of this. Your day's going and you got an interview at 10 o'clock and it's 9:57, and you've not even looked at the resume because the world's on fire and you've got to do different things, and people, your phone's ringing. Uh, Stop and take the time to make sure you have this. You need to have this, because if you don't, you'll get in there and you'll start focusing on what's on the resume and not the reason you're there. Okay. Hiring the best of the worst. Anybody ever done that? I've done that. I've done that, and I've paid for it every time I've ever done it. Every single time. I've heard sales managers, I will question them from time to time. Well, somebody will come in and they'll hire somebody, and 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later they're leaving. It didn't work out, and I'll ask a question. Well, where do you think we went wrong? you know, we are going to make mistakes. I mean, this is a skill. It's an art, a science to it, but we're all going to make mistakes. And it's not always all on us, but we will make mistakes. And you know, I've heard it say, well, he was the best candidate, or she was the best candidate that I had. Okay, well, what was your pool like? Well, I had two people to interview. All right, so you know, we when we do that, we put ourselves in a position to fail at that, because if you've got two and you say, well, I'm going to take the best of the worst, and you know, it's a bad position to be in. Here's what I'm guilty of: put too much weight on first impressions. I can tell you that of all the talents I have, the four or five, it's not like there's that many. The one that I can do, uh, this is arrogant, I don't mean it to be, better than anybody else, and that I don't think I've ever been wrong about, are first impressions in any scenario. And a lot of times I'll have Aaron just walk somebody in my office, and I'll stand up and meet them and maybe say three words to them, and then three words to me, and off they go for an interview to come back. And there's a question that I like to ask is, tell me the one word that best describes you. And most of the time I'll get that just from that initial interview. It may not always be the exact same word, but it'll be a variation of it. But don't put too much weight on it, because you know, if you like people and you know they energize you, just make sure you stick to the script. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. Okay. Um, Telling too much. Don't tell them too much about the job. You know, we want to hear about them. That's one thing that we need to do. And then hiring on one primary characteristic. So to your question, if I'm hiring for a inside sales rep and they have poor account management skills, but I like their energy. You know, I think they can do a good job. I think they can close. You know, part of the job that they have is they need to be able to service accounts. And if they're not doing that part of the job, then I've got a bad fit there. You know, if I need somebody in an ADR position that's, you know, that's really hunting and looking for leads, and they're sourcing their own leads through email campaigns they put together, or LinkedIn, or whatever it is, you know, if that's the role I need, and somebody comes in and they want to be an inside sales rep, then I've got a bad match there. So make sure you don't do that, because if you do that, you'll have one point of failure. And you know, it's just like trying to put a sales deal together. You want to avoid one point of failure. Same way with looking at the primary characteristics when you're trying to hire somebody. So the next thing I like to do is I like to plan the interview. All right. So I'll stop and tell you a little bit of how I was trained to interview people. A guy by the name of Mike Reardon, who's in Kansas City, Kansas, took me through a hiring process. And his hiring process, which I still use a lot of it today, takes about 10 to 12 hours from start to finish of total interview time. It includes a 2-hour assessment that you put them through, a handwriting analysis. So, I mean, there's a lot of detail goes behind it. But, you know, it takes you back to really, oddly enough, this is a question, you probably have never heard this question in an interview. But one of the questions is, you know, I want you to take me on the day you started ninth grade into present day. So if they're 25 or 55, they're going to bring you from ninth grade all the way to that. And you're going to listen to their story. You're going to hear, you know, consistencies, and then you're going to go back inside that and layer that. I don't do that one a lot anymore, because it takes a long time to do that. And a lot of effort goes into it. And best I can tell, the new process that we use, the results are about the same. So we've opted for the shorter one. But there's things in there, but you want to set that. You want to set the environment. So when they come in there, your phone needs to be off, your computer needs to be off, cell phone off, or do not disturb, or whatever you want to put it on. And you want to set that, because you want those people, when they come there, you want them to feel like they're the most important thing in the world, because really they are right now. They're the most important person in the world. And what they're seeing from you is also a future indication of what they can expect from you as a manager if you two get together in terms of hiring someone. Okay. I like to set the agenda. I said, this is what we're going to talk about today. And I take them through that. My initial interview is usually 30 minutes to an hour, because what I'm trying to determine then is, do we have someone that we think is a viable candidate? Okay, so I do that. And then I struggle with this piece a little bit. You know, when a candidate's interviewing, I like them to talk more than I talk. You know, I'll answer some questions, But most of the time, I'm asking questions, and it's not questions they can answer with yes or no. It's questions that they have to think about, and talk about. And understand that a lot of these people are trained to interview. If they're interviewing you, the chances are they're interviewing somewhere else as well. So they may be pretty well polished on this as well. Um, the next thing I do when I'm talking about the job, I describe the job and what it looks like. You know, a typical day looks like this, and I tell them exactly what that is. One thing that Aaron does really well for us, I think all our managers do well, but Aaron I think is exceptional at it, is he takes really detailed notes when he's interviewing people. And just a couple weeks ago, he had an issue with a rep, and he goes over to the file, pulls it out, and, well, this is what you said when we interviewed. Kind of went back through it. And it's not to hold it over their head, but it's let them know, I care enough about you that I'm taking notes, I'm listening to you, we want to coach you through this process. So, but I give them a realistic job preview for that, and we talk about it. We talk about their expectations, what they want in their role, because that's of equal importance. It's just not all about us. This is about, us reaching our goals as a company through people, and then helping them their goals in a professional manner as well. And then one of the things that I do as well is if I have a candidate that I really like, at some point in the interview, I do a takeaway question. Um, I'll pick on Nancy a little bit. She's sitting here. Nancy's interviewing with me, and we're talking. And I have interest in Nancy. One of the things I'll do about somewhere toward the end of the first interview is I'll do a takeaway question for her. And what I'm asking for is, or what I'm looking for, I should say, is I'm looking to see how she'll respond to a negative statement. And I may say something as simple as this, Nancy, I've enjoyed this interview. There's just a couple things I can't really put my finger on. Um, I'm going to need to think about this and see if we should proceed to the next step or not. What I'm looking for there first is to ask me the question, well, what is it that you see? And I can gauge her response and she's interested or not. I can see if she is aggressive enough to come back at me and tell me that I'm wrong about something. I can't think of anything right offhand, but if I said, I don't think you would prospect the way you need you to, she'd come back and say, well, why would you say that? What did I say to make you believe that? This is what I've done in the past, and you go through there. So you want to see that. And a lot of times, and this is really a way to disqualify a lot of candidates, because I've seen this happen. I had a young man years ago, and I made a statement like that to him, and he said, yeah, you're probably right. So, wow, okay. And when I say something, I'm not just making something up. I mean, it's actually something I see, and I want to address it. But a lot of times they'll do that. I had this same young man. There was something that I just couldn't put my finger on, and the interview went on, and we were talking, and I got to the end of it. I said, there's something missing. I said, I can't tell what it is. I said, can you help me? And he kind of slumped down in his chair, and he said, yeah. He said, I live in a halfway house. He said, I'm a recovering drug addict and alcoholic. And I closed my portfolio up. He said, you're not going to hire me, are you? I said, no, I'm not going to hire you. He said, because of what I told you? I said, no. I said, because I don't want to be the person that puts you back in that shape. And that's what sales will do for you, So just remember that. And sure enough, about probably as much as a year later, he called me one day and thanked me for it. So it was a good way. I think if you walk away with one thing in this next section is really good thing. This will help you when salespeople are trying to sell you and on why you should hire them. Behavioral interviewing, So in order to do that, you got to know exactly. It goes back to the first thing. Know exactly what you're looking for, because you're going to look at these behaviors. You're going to ask them, certain questions. But what it does, it helps you eliminate any misunderstandings. That's one thing it'll do for you as well. And then it reduces the candidate's ability to mislead you. So if I'm talking to a candidate and I'm asking them questions about, what does your typical day look like? And they'll give you the standard answers. Well, have you worked with a sales quota before? If so, how often do you meet it? You ask those questions. And when they say, well, almost always. And there's some, we have a lady in our organization. She's been there for almost 7 years, and she's never missed a sales quota, ever. And there's, if I ask her that question, well, tell me what you do to get to that. And she's going to say, well, I host my appointments, I do good follow-up, whatever those things are. And I keep asking questions. Well, how many of those do you have to do in a month? How often are you calling these people? And I just keep asking the questions. And the questions I ask there link to the behaviors that I want to see out of a person in a role. So you keep asking that. And what will almost always happen is they'll run out of answers, or you'll know that their answers are not valid just by if you just keep layering those questions on. But if you will focus on the behavior of the job, it again reinforces what you're looking for, takes away a hiding spot for them as well. All right, so you keep doing that behavioral interviewing. All right, so about 37 months ago, I did an interview with a young man who wanted to come to work for our company. And we started interviewing him, and he's seeing some of these things today. I've taught him some of these things. He does a really nice job for us. He celebrates his third anniversary with us today, so obviously I ended up hiring him. And y'all are in for a treat. He was if this were about 2 weeks later, he couldn't come, so because he and his wife are expecting their second child, a little boy. So Aaron, if you'll come on up. Aaron works for me. He's our sales manager in Tennessee. So congratulations on 3 years and for being part of the BLR company. What I'm going to do is we're going to go through a mock interview. Okay, he and I have done this. I tell him I wouldn't throw him any curveballs, and he can try to throw me something if he wants to.
I believe a word of it.
Uh, but I thought it'd be good to see. About 65% of this nation's population learn from seeing or doing. So as I thought about this, I thought, well, let them watch this process. So while we have rehearsed on the plane coming down here, we have not gone over this a lot. So if you have questions, there's a part at the end that have a Q&A as well. So we'll go through that. All right. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, Nancy. Can you see me get to that last question? All right, we'll do that. Okay. If you started to say, I don't think I finished it. If you do have questions, we're going to have a Q&A at the end of this, and we'll go through this. All right. Good luck. Aaron, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for coming in today. I appreciate you being here. I'm excited about this interview process and the possibility of you possibly coming to work for us. So let's see if we've got a good match here. By the end of this interview, there's three things I'm looking for. And this, do I have the right candidate? Is the role the right role for them? And do they fit on the team? I think it's important that we have all three of those things, because what I want to come from this for you, is professionally for you to be fulfilled in your role, happy with what you do, energetic about what you do, and delighted to be part of the BLR company. Okay. Kind of an odd question off the bat, but by the end of this interview, can you tell me two things you'd like for me to know about you?
Sure. By the end of the interview, I hope you can tell that I always have the best interest of the company in mind. I'll never put myself before the company. I suppose the other thing I want you to know about me is my work ethic is strong, I'm determined, and I'm never going to stop until the job is done.
Okay. All right. You say you have a strong work ethic. What do you attribute that to?
My upbringing, had to earn everything I have today. I was never given anything. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right. You're currently employed, and but for some reason you're thinking about looking for another opportunity. Can you tell me how you've gone about looking for the opportunities that you wanted to interview for? What has been your search activity process?
Typical internet activities, looking on Monster, Indeed, Career Builder. I notice you all have a presence on all of them. Networking through people in my personal life, my professional life, LinkedIn profile, building that up.
Okay. And in your search, there was something about this job that you liked. What attracted you to this job possibility?
Sure. Well, it's inside sales. Throughout my career, I've been in sales for 14 years. I've tried outside sales. I've tried a mixture of inside and out, and I've found that I thrive and I do best in an inside sales environment. So.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that with me. Um, we teach a formal sales process in our company, and you either have one from a formal sales training process, or maybe you've just done it in trial and error to find out, but is there a part of the selling process, and you can call it whatever you call it from the process that you were taught, any part of the process that you like the best or where you excel the best?
The closing aspect of it, I think, like most salespeople. Um, Phone sales is kind of an art. You need to be able to be in tune with the other person on the other end of the phone and really listen and be able to pick up on those buying signals that they're throwing at you. I feel I do a very good job at picking up on those, and when I do pick up on them, I can take advantage of that and execute.
And what are you listening for when you say, because, in face-to-face sales, there's body language.
Mhm.
So for what are you listening for on the phone when you're talking to these people, and there's a possibility to do business? What kind of things would they say where you would um, consider the buying signal?
You're looking for excitement on the phone on the other end. Um, if they're asking you a lot of questions, that's a good sign. Um, Maybe somebody is on the fence. You can kind of tip them over.
Okay. All right. And what part of the process do you think you could use help with?
Product knowledge is an area I've always not lacked in, but I could always use some improvement. Um, when it comes time to determine a buyer's needs, if they say something that should gear me in one direction or the other, and I don't know enough about the products to put them in the right direction, I could lose a sale.
Okay. All right. In this role that we're looking for, we'll supply you with some leads, um, with appointments, to show our products, to talk to customers. Uh, but we'll also expect some activity out of you. We'll get into that when the appropriate time, if we get to that, comes. Um, how would you build your pipeline? What would you do to ensure that you're successful in this role?
First, I need to learn the business that I'm in, learn about the product, the industry, and try to learn who my target audience is. Once I pick that up, I can hit the internet or use whatever tools you guys give me to build a criteria and pull in what I like to call suspects. Um, I'll then come up with a campaign as far as initial contact with them suspects and follow-up contacts, and from there, turn suspects into prospects and then prospects into opportunities.
Okay, all right. In your professional career, it could be personal, either one, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. What's the biggest challenge you've had to overcome?
Professionally, years back, I was at a company as a sales rep, and I had a sales manager who was very hands-off. I saw her maybe twice a week if I was lucky. That type of management, a hands-off, I find is ineffective in the sales world. I prefer to be managed very hands-on as well as managed hands-on. Um, so with that, I had a lot of, not extra time on my hands, but the time that I did have, I used to grow myself as a sales professional in that role and really become accountable for my own work.
What do you consider to be you can advance that one, your greatest accomplishment today?
The organization I was in last, I came in at a sales rep level, entry-level sales rep. Within 14 months, a sales manager position opened, so I applied for it. Um, I was chosen for the role, so to be able to prove myself in such a short period of time, just 14 months, I think speaks volumes.
One of the things that we're going to try to do is give you the proper motivation if you're the selected candidate. So tell me the things or thing that motivates you and why.
Okay. Money has always been my primary motivator as a salesperson. Big surprise. In recent years, I've started a family. Still supporting my family comes before anything. And really, as of recently, it's been the fear of failure. I mean, it all kind of ties together. If I fail in my career, I don't make any money. If I don't make any money, I don't support my family.
Okay, all right. At this point, we're going to go into more kind of the environment of the job, surroundings, the other people, coworkers, those things. So the team fit part of what I said, the right person in the right role in the team fit. Can you tell me how people that work with you, how would they describe you as a coworker?
I would say passionate about sales in my position, probably intense at times. Um, and I think people can see my work ethic that I'm determined. Again, I don't stop until the job's done.
Is that passion or intensity, has it caused any issues for you?
No doubt. If I cross paths with somebody who's not as intense or as passionate as I am, they're not going to understand maybe the pressure I'm putting on myself or the pressure on them to succeed as a company or a team.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about income. You know, income goals are different for different people. So what I'd like to know from you is your income goals for year 1, 2, and 3. Can you share those with me?
Sure. Um, Ultimately, I'd like to be in the six figures. Typically, coming in an inside sales role, it's not achievable your first year. You have to build your way up. Second year, maybe potential, but by the third year in most sales roles, you should be able to achieve a goal of six figures if that is your goal. So, whatever the max potential is for the first year, second year, but by the third year, definitely a six-figure income.
And what about the compensation mix? Does it matter if it's high base, low commissions, or low base, higher commissions, or 50-50 split? How do you feel about that?
I've done it all. I've done 100% commission. I've had a high base with little commissions, and the flip side of that. Um, with all the effort and time I put into myself over my career, I would like to see more of a commission-based program, if not all commission. Um, in developing myself, I want to be able to reap the rewards of doing that.
What other things, or what else would you like for me to know about you, Aaron?
Well, I think it goes back to my work ethic. I want you to know I'm determined. I'm not going to stop until the job's done. I'm a team player. I'll coach others around me. Um, I understand that I work for you. I'll follow your lead, and I'll be an asset to your team.
Okay, all right. Well, that concludes the first portion of our interview, and I appreciate you coming in, and we'll talk further. Okay. All right. Did you hear any similar answers to, or any similar questions, either one, to maybe your interview process? So, can you tell me your name? I'm sorry. Cheryl. It's very good to meet you. Thank you for being here. Did you? What would you do with this candidate? Would you give him a second interview? Would you offer him a job? Okay. All right. Right. You know, one thing that I would, when I have someone like that I really like, um, I'll let it cool off overnight a little bit, and we'll do a second interview. And my first interview, this here, is always to find out about the person, because what I want to know is, are they a quality person? You know, do they have integrity? Do they have a work ethic? Because those aren't things you can teach. And if you're going to build a good sales team, you got to have that at the foundation. There has to be integrity, work ethic, passion, desire. They have to be able to get along with other people. And we have, you know, out of all of our salespeople, we have some that rub other people and each other the wrong way from time to time. So you have to manage through all that. And you have to see how it all fits and puts it together, because, you know, there's a chemistry to a sales team, right? And when I think about the great teams that I've either managed or been on, there were certain things that they all had, and it started with those key components. So in the next interview, we're going to talk more about job specifics, about what the job does. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, she does that. I have heard of that, and I've done it in some specialized roles, but usually not in a entry level role or um, maybe a ADR role that I had described earlier. Um, you touch on the culture. I mean, at BLR for us, culture is very complicated because you got this group in Tennessee. All right, you got the hillbillies in Tennessee. I know that's what they say about us, and I don't blame them. And then you got this group in Connecticut. Okay, so the Northeast is where the founder started the company, right? And then you got this new group in Boston. So you got these three cultures, and we're trying to, make it into one, and it's difficult. And that's one of the things about our managers and our sales reps have all just completed sales training, so we're getting a common language when it comes to that. Have a common practice for interviewing as well. So that gets into the culture, but I mean it's important. It goes back to what I said about fit because the best sales teams that I've been a part of, it was the chemistry that made it work. It's that group of people working for a common cause, and that's just the things that, in the interview process that you want to find out if you have people who are willing to work and to be successful. Because there's a lot of people who are just not willing to work. I mean, it's just unbelievable to me that some of the things that we see. I had a young man that in my previous job, I had two regional managers that reported to me. There were 14 managers that reported to them and about 150 sales reps. And one day I had a regional manager come in to me and said, "We've got a problem with," he called the young man's name. I said, "Well, what's going on?" He said, "Well, he's won't hardly come to work." I said, "Well, what do you mean he won't come to work? I see him walking around." And he said, "Well, yeah, he'll come in the morning and he kind of disappears and we don't see him till the next day." And I said, "Well, ask him these questions, and this is why you would ask these questions." And so what we found out through that series of questions was he was coming in the morning and he's going home, crawling back in the bed, sleeping all day, going out at night, and just kind of repeating this pattern. Really young, energetic, good-looking guy, and I'm sure he's a lot of fun. And so when we found that out, we terminated this young man. And the next day, I'm sitting at my desk, and it's my phone rings. I pick it up, answer it. The guy says, "This is calls his name, and he's the president of the second largest bank in Middle Tennessee." It just happened to be his son that we fired the day before. He said, "I want to come talk to you about this." I said, "Well," I said, "what do you want to talk about?" And so we kind of went through it a little bit, and I said to him, I said, "Why do you think we terminated your son?" He said, "Well, he didn't really know." I said, "Well, you should go home and ask him again tonight. And if he don't know tonight, then you call me tomorrow and I'll tell you." So he called me the next day. He said, "There's no need for us to talk any further." He said, "I found out." So, just finding out about work ethic. What have you done? I grew up in rural Alabama with a grandfather who was uh, hell on wheels times about 20. And we worked. I mean, it was awful. It was awful. Truly, I was the only, of the three grandsons, I was the only one stupid enough to show up. The rest of them wouldn't even come around. But find out what they've done. I mean, work ethic is important. What does it mean for them to be successful? Yes, ma'am. Was your first job? Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question.
I've never managed a sales force, but just as a publisher, one of the things that I often found was I had salespeople who could sell, who were so focused on features and not on benefits. I would want to know, do you understand the difference between a feature and a benefit for your customer? And that when you're talking to a potential customer, what you're trying to determine is what their problems are and how your product is going to solve it. And not just focusing on, we have we got leather seats, we
Right,
got
right,
this, we
right.
got this, we got, a listing of 16 things instead of how it's really going to help them. And that's what I found the hardest thing to sort of talk to salespeople about was that difference.
Absolutely. In our sales process, we talk about there's 5 ways to build trust with a customer. And one of those things that we do is you listen more than you talk, and you focus on what they're buying, not what you're selling. And it's funny, Aaron and I walked around a while ago. We just happened upon this young lady back in the back, and not part of this organization at all. And it was a golf company, and I love to play golf. And so I was drawn to that, their exhibit in there. So I walked up, and she just started talking about what their product did. And I said to Aaron when we left, I said, well, where did she mess up? Where did she go wrong? So that's true, though. Very true. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I think that's a great point. In my previous life, where we were outside sales, we called it a ride along. So candidate would come in and would let them stay in the field for a day. We do the same thing now, inside. Right, right. Yes, sir. Not as much as I had. That's right. Right. We interviewed a lady last week who's in Orange County, California, for a national account group. And she had a couple interviews over the phone. We went through that. And if you're selling over the phone, I would tell you the first interview it should be over the phone because it gives you an idea of what their presence is. Do they mumble like I do? Being from Alabama, we mumble down there. Nobody speaks with very good diction other than my father, who's a minister. He really does. So I've heard it my whole life, as recent as Saturday. Um, that's honest to God truth. At some point in time, I'm gonna get face to face with them because it's not. It's equally important that I see what I'm buying as they see what they're buying. But I would go through that, and in remote management, that's another thing we can get into another time. I think it's extremely tough. It's hard for someone like me that's very very visual. I want to see them. I want to talk to them. I want to see their body language, those things. But at some point in time in that interview process, I want to make sure that we get that right fit. So I think the first couple will be fine. The questions that I gave you today are kind of eliminators, is what they are. Do we want to keep progressing down the road with these people? Because when you get to the next slide, which is making an offer, I think I said it. Yeah. Sorry. I should pay her more. You know, I don't know what your practice is. In our practice, I don't particularly care for, and I get in trouble for this sometimes. Um, we had a young man a few years ago, it wasn't Aaron, who retracted an offer from someone, and I won't get into why, but it was classic. You can never, ever, ever say what you just said. And when he told me what he said, I was just like, oh my goodness, you gotta be kidding me. But making an offer should be a really special time. It's almost like a marriage proposal. I've been married to the same lady for 23 years, and um, probably like 123 years to her, because she's at the raw end of this deal. But I think it's a special time, because at that time, I'm going back through why, this is why we're making you an offer. And it's really, as corny as this is going to sound, it's a special time. Because, the people that I've hired over the years, I can tell you that there's 10 or 12 sales reps that haven't worked for me in 15 years that I still have very frequent contact with. And it's because we built that bond. And I'm a firm believer that people work for people. I worked for Dan Oswald. He hired me. And I would, I'd bust my tail for him because I want to be successful. I want to make him feel like when he hired me 6 years ago that this was the right decision. I was that way with my previous employer. Work hard, but making that offer, you have to get with HR. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but HR don't like for us to make offers, but I like to be, a part of that. I want to be a part of that because I want them to feel like, hey, I'm trust you. I'm believing you. I'm buying into what you're doing, and I care about you. I'll say this, and you have to be careful when you say things like this. I look at sales reps or sales managers in a very, very similar fashion, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way at all, as my children, because I'm going to invest in them. I'm going to invest in these people. I mean, I care about their well-being. I care about their family. I care that Aaron's bought a new house and having a second child. I mean, I want to know about those things. I mean, that's, it's something you can work for and work toward, and I don't think we do enough of those type things. Getting people to tell you, what they want to do, what they want to accomplish. And, you work with that and you work with them on those goals and you help them reach them. But I think that making an offer is a special, special time to do that. Okay? Let's go to conclusion here. Any other questions before we wrap up? I don't know what time we're supposed to be over.
Not now. So.
Not now, right. How about that? Just like a Baptist minister, right? After the Baptist minister, just know when to quit. Yeah, I thought we may get that question. Well, I'll answer that two ways, okay? So as our company at BLR, we have a low teens turnover rate. And we have some people in positions that have been around forever and are very valuable to us. As we migrated more toward the sales instead of a direct marketing company, our turnover rate in sales has crept up. It's in the 30% range. Most of that is managed out, though, because what we want to do is we want to churn that. If we can't, I don't care what you do or what you sell or where you're from. If you look at your sales force, they're going to be in thirds, right? There's a top third that are always the top third. There's a middle that are usually the middle. And then there's the bottom third, and you'll see every once in a while one of them will creep up to the middle and then back down, creep up and back down. So we managed through that to get those people out. And I don't mean that in a non-caring type of way. But, one of the things, and I tell people this when we let them go, which I don't really do that anymore, but if I had to, I'd tell them this, I want to help you find your next career opportunity, because we missed on this somewhere, and We're going to get you, on the road because I don't want you here missing what opportunity is the right opportunity for you. But, I think 30% is probably a good number for us in sales. I think you get that churn out. So get them ramped up? Yeah, okay. Uh, So the first month for us, they don't have a quota. They're there to train and learn. The second month, they'll have a smaller quota, and after 90 days, it steps into a full quota. And some reps have a $15,000 quota, depending on which role they're in. Some have 25, and some have 37,500. So that's how we do that. There was another question. Yeah, yes, ma'am.
You talked about the communication skills in terms of how they would present a product or a feature. What about other skills such as written skills or analytical or math skills that would be necessary? Do you do any screening for those types of skills?
We've done some in the past. We've automated things as much as we can. We have pricing calculators that are, that we have that hang in the cloud, and they just have to if they can click on a box, it's going to tell you what it costs. and most of them by now can click on a box, believe it or not. Written skills, we let our marketers do most of that. On occasion, they'll one of them kind of. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that again. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Because I've seen some of them, they kind of go rogue from time to time, and they think they want to write something, and you get it back, and you're thinking, no, don't ever do this again. Yeah, we compensate for that in other ways. If they were going to interface a lot and do a lot of that, a lot of quoting, those things, we'd absolutely do that. And I've done that in the past, so I'm familiar with that. Any other questions? You've been a great audience. It's hard to compete with the beach of Miami and free drinks, so I'm going to let you go.
Well, see, that's where we're going now. Now we're going out back to that sponsor area where the happy hour reception is, and you can go out on that deck and enjoy some sun and not be inside all day. And then after that, there's a dinner. So thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.